Hi, I'm Dr. Diane Neubauer, and welcome to Conversations about Language Teaching. I am going solo just for a moment to make an announcement. I wanted to make sure that, especially those of you who are within traveling distance in Michigan or near Michigan in the US, that you knew about the 2026 Mitten CI conference that takes place in Saline, Michigan, near Ann Arbor and near Detroit, from April 17th in the late afternoon through early evening, and all day on Saturday, April 18th. I will be there and be leading a workshop on translanguaging and 90% target language use and issues like that on Friday. So I have a couple or 3 hours to hash through some ideas there and think about applying those concepts to your classroom. And then I'll have 2 sessions on Saturday. But there are so many other people who are great presenters and workshop leaders, both Friday and all day Saturday. It is also a great place to network and meet other language teachers. There are also some booths if you're looking for materials for your classroom or ideas for curriculum. And it's a great place to make connections that last through the school year. So I will put the link in the show notes, but it's Mitten CI 2026 if you want to look for that.
Hello and welcome to Conversations about Language Teaching. I'm your co-host, Dr. Reed Riggs, he, him.
And I'm Dr. Diane Neubauer, she, her. And today Reed is leading this episode. You want to talk about what we're going to talk
Sure.
about?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So we look through our list of topics. The way we choose every time is Diane and I keep just a running document with different things we might want to talk about in the future. And so today's topic is going to be, do different levels of learners need different things? So yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because we talk past each other a lot as educators because we are thinking of some specific group, typically our own, or one specific class, or even
Or
one
age or
age,
language
yep,
that you're teaching.
which language, heritage, non-heritage, and we tell the teacher, "Oh, you got to do this. Like you got to do this thing with, or I did this thing that works. This is the thing that works." So I guess we could post a link to the post methods thinking that's really been the dominant view in SLA circles, second language acquisition research circles since 1990.
About there, kind of a big, we have an episode about it actually, the Prabhu article about, let's see, there is no best method, why?
Right.
And it's not saying that things don't matter that you do in the classroom. It's not saying that it's, just whatever goes and whatever happens, happens. It's not like that. It's like there are principles that are, you can't pin so neatly down that you can say, if I do this, then this will happen in every case. It's just people are more complex and it's not as neat and tidy. But there are big general things that might look necessary across all kinds of different learners, perhaps. But maybe there are different things about different stages of language acquisition that can be more beneficial if we hone this side in. And I'm kind of thinking of this sort of thing in terms of a teacher in a classroom too, is not just cognitive language development. It's also like socially, what do they need to be able to participate in the lesson well? What do they need to feel confident about their progress? I mean, a lot of times I think novice learners get anxious because they can't vocalize all that much very easily. And so they sometimes, partly because of, the history of language teaching, they think that means they're not doing well. And so
we know from research
all those
on
sorts of issues.
There's foreign language anxiety and foreign language reading anxiety. Foreign language anxiety was, I think at its inception, not meant to be specific to just speaking and listening. But then foreign language reading anxiety research came out and said, oh, actually, that thing you call foreign language anxiety that came first seems to be more about speaking and listening. Now we need a separate thing called foreign language reading anxiety. So this has been identified in research that students do get anxious around speaking and listening. And I see my students get really kind of worked up and nervous if I don't tell them to understand very little. If we're doing something where I'm expecting them to understand very little. such as just hearing me explain some pictures in a kind of fast speaking way because I'm trying to do a sort of fast listening kind of thing. So student perceptions about their own success are one big factor. I think there are a lot of factors, but with this episode, we're going to focus on do different levels of learners need different things.
Hmm.
So we'll just focus on that a little bit.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and can I start off with thinking about like something that I think is kind of out there, in at least in US world language teaching.
Hmm.
So I'll just say, I think the actual three modes of communication, when presented as if they are equal portions of one third, one third, one third,
Mm. Hmm.
especially when you have novice learners who are not able to do tons of complex interpersonal, may need really highly scaffolded interpretive content, and then presentational may need to really be very brief and short. And so to divide that up as if every single level of learner needs one third of class should be on
Mm,
interpretive
mm, mm.
work. So in other words,
Sure.
listening, reading, taking from messages in the target language and making
Yeah.
sense of them.
Yeah.
And then interpersonal, where is it more back and forth? It's unrehearsed. You're
Yeah.
not doing a script. You're listening and then responding in real time, and then listening again and responding again. Sometimes clarifying meaning, sometimes clearing up a misunderstanding. But that's the interpersonal. And then presentational is where you're either delivering talk or written content that others are really primarily not going to interact with. So you're not getting a lot of feedback right away. It's more like something you deliver and then you're done, and you might get applause. But
Yeah.
and so like those sometimes I think that that modes of communication thing, I think, is a helpful tool to think about how do we use language, and how can we think about what kinds of uses of language are we preparing learners to do. But if we're treating it like, therefore, one third of class should be this, one third of class should be
Mm,
this, and one third of
mm,
class should be this
mhm.
across the entire proficiency range, then I think we've misunderstood how to use that information. But I have seen that happen. I have heard people talk
I
before
see. Yeah.
about doing it that way. And that's one of those things that I think, like, wow, we need to really rethink, I think, how we teach novice learners if that's the way we're going to act.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's
So
that. There's my hot take. I don't know if
it's
that's, I
good.
don't think that's a hot take, actually.
It's
I
well,
think that's just,
for some people it would be a very
it
hot
might be.
take.
Yes, yes,
So
maybe.
there's also the question of assessment. Should assessment be done in three equal things as well? And
Yeah.
it's really going to depend on where the learners are at and what you think they're capable of. And I don't think that they should be taught as if it's a big standardized test when it's really
All
just
the time.
like the first unit test of their first year in the language ever.
Right. Yeah.
So
And there's
go
kind
ahead.
of different goals for different sorts of assessments. Like you were just mentioning something where you're exposing students to more fast listening content where they
Yeah.
really are meant to just catch some words and kind of get a sense of this is how Chinese sounds. And
I
and that's a
wouldn't,
goal that's
I wouldn't,
specific.
yeah, I wouldn't make that an
Mhm.
assessment in that form though,
Right.
because I don't
Right.
expect them to achieve high competence in that kind of listening.
Right.
I provide that because I expect it to be a really long term, slow developmental trajectory that
Hmm.
they need that exposure in order to develop in the long run. And so
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Kind of that
wait.
idea of the very
Yeah.
first episode we did on comprehensive, comprehensible input.
Right. Right. It's
Like
part of
the
the
idea of like
diet.
different kinds of,
Yeah.
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 Um, yeah. And well, I was thinking of assessment in terms of just formative
Oh, oh,
assessment, where you're
sure.
just getting feedback of like, huh, what can the students do today? Let's see what
Oh,
happens.
that's fine. Yeah.
Um,
But in terms of
but
the graded stuff, the big graded
yeah.
assessments, I wouldn't say make sure that I'm teaching them toward this big test that's one third presentational mode, one third interpretive mode, and one third interpersonal. Even if I was required to do that, then I would make the presentational and interpersonal, I would make them level appropriate, and I might make the
Mhm.
interpretive one again level appropriate, but they just might look different from each other. Where it's like, here's an authentic text that we're seeing if you can do that. I've been preparing you for. It's going to be different. It's just going to be different across different modes
Mhm.
for beginners compared to someone who's more advanced.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of that idea that is also one that is tossed around a lot, that the what is it? modify the task, not the text, something like that. So
Right.
like the idea of like, well, novice learners could maybe just pick out a few words from this video.
Sure.
Um, and that might be, I mean, I think that can, when scaled
Yeah.
to, it's okay for you to just catch a little bit. We're just going to spend a minute or two just to kind of get a feel for
Hmm.
how fast things are on a TV
Yeah.
commercial or something like that.
We're talking
And
about
like, oh,
novices. Yeah.
that's yeah,
For
yeah, yeah.
novices. Yeah.
And so we're yeah, like, oh, you picked out a few words. That's so great. That's
Yeah.
exactly where you should be as a novice.
Yeah.
That's fine
Sure.
when that's the sole solid diet for that novice learner.
No,
Like,
no,
oh
no,
my goodness,
no,
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 no.
no. So where
Yeah.
then that's where it's like this kind of overly
Yeah.
prescriptive,
Sure.
every learner or everywhere just needs just modify the task, not the text. Well,
Right.
let's give them some really level, like you called it, level appropriate,
Yeah.
like learner appropriate, learner designed
Sure. Learner design is
materials.
great for. I think at any level you can have things that are appropriate for the level, which engage them not in the, pick out a couple things kind of
Mhm.
task. No, you can include that too, but
Yeah.
have things that are designed for them. I think about my daughter a lot. That she's 3 years old. We're reading the silliest little books from the library, and the library is full of books written for 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. There's little board books her little sister has with one word on each page. There can be age appropriate, level appropriate text,
Yeah.
and typically teachers are the most like aware of their learners to know what would be fitting for that. And it's okay to cobble
Yep.
something together on your own if it's engaging to your students and they're engaging with language usage. And ideally, there's some sort of context going on, like it's a story about something. I had one that was fun that a teacher at a Star Talk program reached out to me like 5 years later. He said, I love I brought this back to my school and my students love it. It's ni hao, hello, on every single page. And but it's different people being silly, but there's a progression to it. And if you're familiar with Sandra Boynton books,
Yeah.
I feel like
Cartoonist. Yeah.
it's incidentally similar to those where like Annie's got a book where you three different animals go like yellow hat, green hat, blue hat, oops, and then it's this turkey wearing the hat on his feet. And then the next page,
Hmm.
green shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, oops, and then the turkey's wearing the shirt, I don't know, around his pants area. And then the final one is he gets it all right, but he's jumping into a pool. You don't wear normal daily clothes jumping into a pool. And so it's funny for 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
But this thing that I did, and I think is incidentally similar, I didn't know about Sandra Boynton books at the time, but I just felt out like what would be the next silly thing to have someone saying ni hao. So I think I had like Ron Weasley yell like ni, and then there was some other funny character going how, and so then it went like ni, and I wrote the font was bigger, and then the other character goes how, and the font's even bigger, and then they go ni hao, and then there's one where the voice bubble goes around ni hao. They're both saying it at the same time, and it goes to the next page. It's just different people saying ni hao in funny ways, but it gets more intense and less intense, and tiny little font and giant font to represent intensity. And the students at the Star Talk camp where I first introduced it found it hilarious, and I thought, great, it's exactly what I intended. It's just ni hao being funny.
Hmm.
But he said that he's like, what did you do? He asked me like, what? He called me on the phone like 5 years later. He's like, what was your process? Like, I can't figure out what you did there to make
Yeah.
something like
Made
that
it
because
so
my students
interesting.
love it. Yeah, my every year my students just
Yeah.
love it. And I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
What
just
a
thought,
simple
what would
idea.
be
Yeah.
funny? What would be funny to middle schoolers?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
my
Those
process
sound
was.
like middle
Yeah,
school. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I had a middle school student who used to use a picture of, now I'm going to forget the actor's name, Nicholas Cage.
Oh,
He would find photos on the internet to illustrate these different things that we were talking about in class. And so Nicholas Cage was doing all the things that we were learning to talk about in Chinese. And so it was really funny because we could count on it. Like they would share their images to match up with sentences
yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just this running gag too, because everybody was like, "Oh boy, what's he gonna do with Nicolas Cage this time?"
That's
But
it. Though.
yeah,
It's the
those little
anticipation of
side
like what's
jokes.
going to come next, but it's also like developed internally, by the teacher or by the students or jointly together.
Yeah,
But I think that teachers shouldn't shy away from creating text for their students.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, that's the joy of it. Like, yes, we want to expose them to target language communities, to other cultures, but we also need them to be aware of their own and celebrate their own and
yeah. Oh
be
yeah.
grounded in where they've come from as they're adding and expanding
Yeah.
on who they are and what they know.
Yeah,
And so,
I love when I hear
you know,
someone say like when I say, "Well, how do you know German?" Like, "Oh, I used to work at a bank in Germany. I used to work at a cafe in France." It was our friend Evelyn picked up French in a little cafe in Paris, I think.
well,
And so she had a tutor as well, she told me, but she just spent every day. And so I love when I hear someone say something similar about a classroom and say, "Oh, my teacher used to always say xing," and I just remembered that recently that xing became this like it means like okay or like very good. She'd say that all the time. It was just this constant thing she'd say in class, and I love when I hear people say like, "Oh yeah, so and so used to say this all the time in X environment that I used to be in." And so the classroom really
hmm.
can and should be that. It's that first little nesting place
Yeah,
for students
like a
to,
memorable connection there.
yeah, but
Yeah.
building up that competency in the classroom because it's a real
Yeah.
place where we can really use the language.
Yeah. Well, if I can go for a hot take based on the age thing,
Yeah.
because this is another one that I think I hear sometimes, like it's the idea, and it's not exclusively the idea of using an authentic resource, like some kind of found item out in the world that was not designed for people to learn a language from, but then that's used in the classroom somehow or another.
So-called
But yeah,
so-called
so-called.
authentic text. Yeah.
Yes, right, 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 right. And that's why I'm caveating it. I
Sure.
prefer the term found or
Found. Yeah.
created
hmm
personally, but
hmm
created for learners versus found and
hmm
then used for them.
Sure.
But the thing about that is that sometimes I think, do we match the age of the learner to what? So like, oh, I'm going to show them these. I've done this. Whereas like, I think it was way back. It was when I had a textbook where they're very themed around these different vocabulary items,
hmm
nouns
hmm
especially.
hmm
And so it's like, oh, they need to know about hotels. Will a 14-year-old choose a hotel room and
Right.
set up a hotel room and pay?
Right.
Probably no,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
maybe they do need to know some aspects of that process.
Yeah.
But if they're going to be traveling, they're going to be with an adult, I think, at
Yeah.
age 14, I hope,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and are going to be relying on those adults to make those things. They might help the decision, like, oh, who are you rooming with?
Right.
Um, okay, so tomorrow at breakfast, be at the lobby at this time. Like those things, like,
hmm
okay,
Yeah.
if you've
Yeah.
got some kind of thing, but like think about what do they really need and what's really relevant to their age and maybe
Yeah.
what's interesting to their
hmm
age so that it's not like yeah, a mismatch of their actual
Yeah.
lives.
Well, and the best way to get that is not by guessing ahead. And this gets
Yeah.
at like kind of two things. One is when we come back to the fictional thing, like you said, Nicolas Cage, Ron Weasley. Those really should be based on what you see the students being into and not based on saying, oh, some other teacher did it or it's on TV.
Right.
Therefore, if
Right.
I just do this, the students will enjoy it. You
Right.
kind of have to open this. The best way to do it is to open the space to the students so that they can
Yeah.
see you'll see what they contribute and what they laugh at. Like
Right.
that's the stuff. And also there's an extra layer to that, which is their own ownership from the moment it was introduced. And so I've seen situations where students will yell out, "It was SpongeBob," and everyone laughs, and then okay, that's kind of owned and treated by that student. In fact, the Star Talk Hawaii camp I used to work at, there's a lot of so I recorded that for my dissertation, and I had all the video to look at, and I noticed a lot that when a student would introduce an idea, such as there was a vampire romance one that was very funny. It was what was this guy doing, watching movies, what movies, vampire romance. Everyone laughed, but every time vampire romance was mentioned afterwards in the story, a lot of students would look over at the student who introduced it, even though he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
talking anymore. He wasn't even contributing
Yeah.
anymore, but they'd look
But
over at
it's
him when it
like
came
he
up.
brought that in.
It's his thing.
Hmm.
And so it's very different from a teacher introducing it. You know, if the teacher's
Oh,
like, "Hey,
totally.
hey, SpongeBob," it's like, well, that's how you
Hmm.
kill it. Not because SpongeBob is boring. It's because the teacher introduced it.
Yeah.
And so who owns it? Well, not the students anymore. It's not owned by the
Right.
students. So Now
Yes,
that,
definitely. So that is something that I think does apply across all different levels. Like students need to
mhm.
be involved in the actual content of what's talked about in the classroom.
Yeah, and it could be real things
Yeah.
like their own lives,
Yeah.
what they did, what they want to do. I'd be careful on that front, though. There's another side to that, which is that students,
Mhm.
especially in middle school, high school, are often
Yeah.
not comfortable sharing much. You know, everyone in the room might laugh at them if they share that they like a
Yeah.
certain band, or they just
Sure.
don't know if everyone will laugh at them, so they're not willing to share. So I wouldn't pry
Yeah.
it out of students.
Or or a few might be intentionally inappropriate and pick something that's like somebody that just was arrested for something,
Right, right.
and like,
Yeah,
so being aware that like really
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, double checking them
yeah,
that this is really going to work. But yeah, definitely.
yeah,
I think some teachers have done like polls, like
yeah.
students can write down like here's a list of like 10 different categories of like, do you have a famous person that you admire?
Hmm.
Like this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so coming up with a few ideas from that, and then you can check in advance.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's still student owned. It's like one of those like juggle things where,
Yeah, something in the middle, not
yeah,
too open, not too closed.
yeah, yeah,
So that's especially useful at the beginning levels, and especially useful in K to 12, probably middle school, high school. My college students did always like that, but they also didn't need it as much.
yeah.
We could just run with the textbook, and they're like, "What's the next test?" Because our when I was at UH, everything had a big test, and then at BYU, we were still required to teach from a textbook, and so
Hmm.
students were like, "Okay, that's the thing. That's what we're focused
Yeah,
on. Whatever
yeah, yeah, yeah.
dresses it up a little bit, they're happy with that."
That's
But
okay,
they
but
knew what was coming next because they all had bought these campus store textbooks. So
right.
they
And so
just
that's
didn't.
another sensitivity to context thing to take into account. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And also the
that,
college textbooks are written for college students, so the content is assuming these sort of quasi kids who can
yeah,
go out to restaurants, who can visit each other's dorms, and often there's like situations where they visit each other's dorms. Oh, you want something to drink? Hey, we should all hang out this time. That's not how life works for middle schoolers and high schools in the United States, at least. So yeah, it's even better to just adapt other things. That doesn't mean
yeah,
imitate the life of the students either. And I can say again, my
yeah.
three-year-old is not reading about three-year-olds.
Hmm.
And I've said this before. A second grader wearing a Batman backpack. Batman is not a second grader. Like the fiction you work with them or whatever topics you talk about
Yeah,
with them can be about them and can be about people their age, but I think it's just
yeah.
wrong thinking
Doesn't
to
have to
think
be.
everything needs to be exactly like their current life. So even the college textbooks don't need to lean so much into like, oh, this is about people like you. I think it's good to include
Right,
it, but it doesn't need to
right.
strictly limit to that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's content stuff. In terms of language,
right.
I think that what we're getting at here is that these content types of things are ways to create space for you to use language that's level appropriate.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I do advocate for including level appropriate, authentic, found texts. To me, it's a way of knowing that you're on track to getting students ready for the world outside. I've had an idea that I haven't done yet, but I've been thinking about it for a long time, years and years, 5 years, 10 years. Get a lot of photos of the target language in your local neighborhood, or at least where the students are likely to encounter it, or at least maybe where you could bring them, or where they already go, or at least you can say like, "Hey, over on this corner, if you walk past it, you can see this."
Hmm.
For me, there's some Chinese restaurants around. We have Chinatown. The Our students live in Kailua and Kaneohe, which are not near Chinatown. It's kind of the other end of the island. But there's a little restaurant called Yan Yan over there, and it's actually probably Yan Yan. It's Yanyan, but in characters it's Xin Xin, Xin Shang to
Oh,
Xin, like appreciate.
yeah, yeah.
And I had my students do a linguistic landscape project around that. So one of them got a bunch of photos, brought them in, they shared it with the students, and they did a little presentation about it. But I want to do more of that where, and even like things in grocery stores, if there's Chinese characters, Costco has some boxes that have Chinese characters on them. But I'd like to just increase the likeliness that my students can recognize Chinese characters in their actual lived life. And so I think photos from around town could be appropriate. And that could be useful at any level. I think about this now that my seniors who have been learning Chinese for 12 years, they're not likely to like see a Chinese character out in the world and like look up in a dictionary and then figure out what it is. Like they're just waiting for the
Hmm.
coursework to be done.
Hmm.
It's much like if I see a song in a TV show, I don't get out a piano and try to learn the song on the piano. Like it's
Hmm.
just music that's in passing and it's not something, even if I like it, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like try to learn the song. I think my students just think of it as like, all right, Chinese class is Chinese class and Chinese out in the world is just not my priority. It's not part of my Chinese class, so
Yeah.
why would I look it up? And I would
Well,
do it. Yeah.
yeah, I can't say, I mean, I have had students who were motivated learners that were like, they were into it. And they like would
Yeah.
come into class and say, hey, I saw this thing. I took a photo of it. Look at this.
I want that
And so
more and I
excited.
don't
So
see that though.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's, yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't tons of times. And,
Right.
but it was at least opening their mind to the fact that it's out there. So find it,
Right.
look for it, see it,
I'm hoping this
celebrate when you
would
see
get
it.
that to happen more. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think beginners need a whole lot of repetition. Do we want to kind of
Yes. Yeah.
mention that? Like
Well,
to
that's what I was going to say. Should
spool the
we maybe to
thread?
rope back
Sure,
to the idea of like if we're talking about interpersonal communication,
sure.
interpretive
Hmm.
communication,
Hmm.
and presentational
Sure.
communication, my sense is that the diet needs, if you will,
Hmm.
like of a novice learner are going to be much more around interpretive
Yeah,
content
sure.
and not of, just pick out a word here and there, but
No,
a
no.
lot of interpretive content that they can really understand. The
Yeah.
same way when we speak with a 2-year-old,
Hmm.
we speak a little more
What I
simply.
call it. Yeah,
We help them, and and again, we're making comparisons between first language and second language, which maybe could be a whole episode.
sure.
But I think there is some correspondence on this point. To develop a mental system of language that
Hmm.
has, sentences and discourse and all this stuff,
Hmm.
you can't just understand a word here and there and
Yeah,
develop that whole system. You
sure.
need to understand the whole
Yeah,
thing to
yeah,
get that whole thing built up in your mind.
yeah,
Or you're going to start, using your first language and kind of recreating your own version of this target language
yeah,
that is not going to match up very well. I have seen students try to do that.
yeah.
I
There's
mean,
also, yeah,
inadvertently. So
yeah,
like my advice then would be like
yeah,
have really highly comprehensible content for the mainstay majority of the time with those novice learners and really focusing in on their comprehension of it, their understanding and interpretation of it, and then their responses that might be quite simple, but it's like that's what's building their system. It doesn't
sure.
require a lot of their spoken language or
Yeah.
repeating full sentences for them to develop the mental
Hmm. Hmm.
representation and later ability to use those sentences. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
it does. Yeah.
I feel
Um,
like this is one of the hardest things to get,
sure.
both as a learner and as a teacher for
Yeah.
people, because we've been so trained that everybody across the whole spectrum, you do these same things and
Yeah.
then they,
Well, there's also a problem with definitions of, you know, if we're going to define communication in a more, I guess, scientific sense, communication often doesn't involve language, especially in animals, especially in children. A lot of communication is nonverbal, and so if you're talking about if we're really truly talking about communication, then we're not defining it in terms of producing language. We're not saying
right.
presentation means you're producing a lot of language. Interpersonal means two people are producing language equally, and interpretive means that you're producing no language.
Yeah.
It's really a mode of interaction. It's best to think of it as a mode of interaction. I think it's most useful to think of it as a mode of interaction, three modes of interaction, where
Hmm.
the person who's in presentational mode is the one doing the expressing of meaning. It might involve a lot of pointing at pictures at a novice
Hmm.
level while maybe saying a word. Maybe they act out something to get their point across. Not that I'm advocating this, but it
Hmm.
could, and it would still be in that definition of presentational if everyone else is just sitting as audiences.
Hmm.
And so that would I call presentational mode. And maybe for novices, if you say like, all right, here's your assessment, your big graded test, get up there and present to us. If you have to act out some things with your hands, use whatever language you've got. Now, for those, often something is memorized, and I've seen ACTFL representatives say that it's normal to memorize a script for presentational mode because
For presentation.
in real
Yeah.
life, people have some kind of script
Yeah.
usually. So that's a little
Yeah.
different. Maybe for that, it's you're not even caring about measuring their language there, but it's just about the preparation for it that you want them to have that experience, and you're measuring
Hmm.
what they're able to prepare as opposed to what they're able to do
Yeah.
spontaneously. So that could be a different kind of goal for that.
Yeah.
Interpersonal mode, it's I don't think it's useful to define it as if you conceive of language processing and language learning as producing language, then you would define interpersonal mode as two people producing language equally.
Hmm.
But if you're defining it in a more scientific sense of communication, which includes nonverbal communication, which is most
Hmm.
typical in small children and animals, then it would be, one person might be producing lots of language and the other person is like shaking their head, like, or
Hmm.
nodding.
Right.
My wife talks to our daughter pure Vietnamese, and Annie responds typically in simple English.
Mm.
That's two-way communication. That's interpersonal. She's like, "Can mình uống nước không? Uống nước?" And then Annie goes, "I don't want milk right now." And so it's
Yeah.
like Annie's showing she
She understood.
understands and she's giving a response that solves the task. Do you want milk
Yeah.
right now? I don't want milk right now. Okay, we're done. Or maybe mommy will prod a little bit more, like push her, like, well, we're gonna go out the door, and she'll explain that in Vietnamese. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll drink the milk. But Annie's responses are always in English, and so I would not call that interpretive mode. I would not call that presentational mode. They are having a back and forth interaction. It's just only one
Hmm.
person is speaking the target
Interpersonal.
language. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and then uh, interpretive, I don't know if we have to debate that one too much. That should be hearing
Hmm.
the target language or reading the target language and,
Hmm.
showing some sort of comprehension,
Yeah.
or just showing willingness. There's another gate around this whole system though, and I I'd like to say it's integral enough to be called part of the system, which is motivation, and it's a problem with everyone who's not a child.
Mm.
People give
Why are
up.
they there?
people
What the,
just
yeah.
people give up. They just give up. Like people get on Duolingo and they give up. People try to take a college class, they fulfill the requirement and they give up. Like people give up all the time. It's the
Hmm.
most normal thing is they just give up. And once you do that, then you're not engaged with input. You're not engaged with target language
Hmm.
communities. You're not doing
Communities.
anything.
Yeah.
And so I think that having comprehensible interactions and comprehensible experiences seems to be a major factor where people are like, it decides whether or
Yeah.
not they say, I can't do it. It's too hard. I don't know what's
Right.
going on. It's too, I shouldn't be here. It's too
Yeah.
hard for me. I'm not cut out for this. And then when they develop a belief about themselves, like,
Right.
I knew I wasn't good at
Now,
languages.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like
that's, yeah,
the brain is looking for reasons to not have to change. And
sure.
so
Yeah.
if you hit some roadblocks enough, um, then yeah, and there's
Yeah.
not some other thing to make you overcome that, it's going to
Yeah.
be pretty demotivating. I was hoping to bring up kind of if we've mentioned a lot about novices and what they might need. I want to
Yeah.
think about a little further along.
Sure.
I feel like novice learners are always the bottleneck
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah.
and so if we can't do novices well, then we can't get very many people into intermediate and advanced anyway. So like let's do
Yeah.
novice well so everybody can gain another language because they can if
Yeah.
they know one language,
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
developmentally able.
Hmm.
But so like those intermediate folks and those more advanced folks, what I end up finding myself doing with those is inviting them to carry if we're having a discussion among the group, I'm inviting them to carry it much more.
Yeah.
This was true in the classroom. It's true in my online classes where it's like, it's both a diagnostic for me, like, what do they know? What are they interested in? Where is their language? Maybe expressively they're breaking down. That's where I can provide some input and give them a little chunk and then work with that little chunk for a bit so that they can understand and start to develop that extra layer of productive ability. Um, so it's not that, like, what am I saying? I do hear more student talk, I would say, when they're in a more advanced level or intermediate and up kind of levels. But it's not that I think that that's where their development comes from. Like they have to rehearse speaking.
Mm.
No, it's that they have a speaking
Oh yeah.
ability.
Hmm.
And so that's where we go with it. So I've said something before in talking about like how does comprehension-based language teaching look when you get towards, upper intermediate and advanced levels? And my comment was that it looks more like communicative language teaching in the sense that a lot of people mean it, where
Yeah.
it's students are doing a lot more of the talking, the teacher is more of the guide on the side kind of a
Sure.
thing, because the students have some ability, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of honing and shaping and expanding that's going on in their language development
Right.
at that point.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh yeah.
Hot take? Is that another
So
hot take? I
it's
don't
not
know. I
well,
don't
it
think it
depends
is,
on
but
every in
yeah,
language
yeah,
teaching
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
research, everything is a
Everything
hot
is.
take depending
This
on
is true. This
who's
is true.
listening. Um, yeah, for sure. Well, at the advanced level, if you want them reading newspapers and watching full films, that's the
Mhm.
input piece. Like there's just always a need for
Yeah, there's
exposure to more
always,
language.
there
And
we go.
in the limited
Hmm.
classroom hours we have, we just shouldn't expect development to happen so fast. And it can't happen on a calendar. See,
Hmm.
nobody looks at a child and says, "Did you put this particular grammar form on a calendar? Did they achieve that yet? Or did they speak their full words yet?" I just found out that
Yeah.
the
Well, maybe
Spanish
researcher parents might. Is that
researcher parents should do the opposite and just
well, yeah.
respect
Chill
development.
out. Chill
Chill
out.
out.
Yes.
Yeah. When it happens, note it on the calendar.
Yeah, yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
saying
That's what
put
I'm
on.
thinking.
I'm
I
not
know you've
saying.
done that,
I'm
so
not saying
it's
put on the calendar in advance like a teacher would and say
yeah,
by this
right.
date
I
they have
see.
to have mastered
Yes.
it. That's what I'm saying. And
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
but we do that in classrooms where we say, okay, on this date, here's your assessment. You have to have mastered all these things before them. And then it's a question of does the teacher really believe that that's a long term?
Hmm.
Like now it's in their mental representation and it's in their competency set,
Yeah.
or is it just the preparation is providing them with the environment that will gradually help them, but they know they're going to forget everything that was specific to that test. And in that
Hmm.
sense, that's a little more honest, at least.
Yeah.
So I was going to say something about 3-year-olds
And
putting their.
calendars.
Oh yeah, I just found out that. So I was in the car and I've been trilling. I've been doing Spanish R's for
Oh,
Annie
yeah,
for
yeah.
years, and I was in the car just a couple days ago, and I just being funny, I just went, "Arrrr, Annie, can you do it?" And I thought she's been exposed to it in that window that we talk about, that statistical learning people talk about. Infants between 2 months and 10 months have this open window to just take in any
Oh, yeah.
phoneme from every language. And then it kind of closes off because their brain is like, I think I
It's-
got it now. I'm ready for
yeah. These are
putting
the
these
ones I really
pieces.
need.
Yeah, I need these. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put these pieces to look for these
Yeah.
pieces in bigger things, but I don't
These
need to
ones
like
don't mean anything
not,
to me
yeah,
in my
or
life. And so
I'll
I
lump them
just, yeah.
into my current set of categories, something like that. And so I thought, well, she's 3 years old, she should have those now. And so she got really frustrated. And so Annie just said,
Hmm.
she goes, I can't do it. And so I thought, oh, I don't want to frustrate
Mm.
her. And then I thought, wait, she has English phonemes that she doesn't say still. Her R's and L's are
Okay.
mostly W's. She talks like a
And it's
3-year-old.
adorable.
It's adorable, and we
Yeah.
want them to.
A
Like we love
wheel
it.
kitty.
A wheel
Yeah.
kitty,
Instead.
yeah. It's a wee
Yeah.
wee,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's so little. So I thought, wait, what am I expecting of these rolled R's, these trilled R's?
Mm.
And so I looked up a blog post, and a clinician was talking about children, and he said Spanish native speaking children do not develop their trilled R's until around age 7.
Yeah.
And I thought
It's a
that's a
while.
long time for a native speaker, and that's awesome. And so then I was wondering what parent perceptions are. Like, oh, my kid still doesn't say his R's. That's a separate question. I'd love to hear more about if any
Yeah.
listeners have thoughts. But then I realized I got to lay off and don't push her to do that. Now, our classroom
Hmm.
learners have way
Yeah.
fewer hours. And so you shouldn't be expecting pronunciation on any particular date. You shouldn't be expecting vocabulary on any particular date. You should not be expecting specific grammar patterns on any particular date.
Hmm. Yeah.
They're
And this
going to
is why I think it's
develop.
way better to grade things by a rubric that's about communication
Right.
goals
Yeah.
rather than about accuracy of production or
Because it
analysis,
allows them to
production or
participate.
analysis. Yeah.
And if your goal is something like I can order food in a restaurant, or I can say what allergies I have, or I can explain a medical problem. In real life, if you are honest and you want them to be able to do that, it should include pointing. It should
Hmm.
include,
Can
you
they
know,
accomplish the
can I
task
accomplish the
instead of
task? Yeah,
hmm
but at least then you're set up to provide level appropriate experiences, lots of exposure to language that in the long run will help them grow. And in the short run, they can do that thing. They can be
Hmm.
at a doctor and say, toe, and point to their head,
Yeah, and that
and then
might be enough for
act it
them.
out. And then you also give them an assessment that is language level appropriate, that maybe doesn't seem so authentic. And that way
Yeah.
they're also able to show their actual, you know, a couple of sentence level, maybe simple sentences in a big paragraph, maybe a story about something that's coherent and engaging.
Hmm.
So sort of that diet, I think, is more
Yeah, yeah.
appropriate. But yeah, for advanced
Yep.
learners, I think that
Yeah.
as we move on, I'm having my students do micro presentations. I think I mentioned that in the last episode that
Yes. Yeah.
they just popcorn up and say a couple things. Now, I always have an eager student who goes on for like a full 2 minutes, and it's other students then say, "Oh, we're supposed to do that." I'm like, "No, no, remember, I said just one
Yeah.
sentence." But it's
Here's the thing to
space for
start.
that, yeah. And then I
Hmm.
interact with them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
And
feel it out. That's the takeaway. Feel it out.
yeah. Yeah. And just a final
Yeah,
point there, and it's something you mentioned, but just wanted to reiterate because I think it comes back to it. It's not that the advanced learner stops needing really rich exposure to language that they understand highly very well.
yeah.
Like I still need that in my Chinese.
Oh yeah,
And so it's yeah, that never goes away. But there might be other things that are happening in the classroom at that level too.
yeah.
That's my thinking about it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening. I've been Reed Riggs.
Yeah. And I'm Diane Neubauer.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.